When my sister and I left the group home for the last time, all that awaited us was our uncle's land. But in the attic, what we found there would change not just our future, but our entire past. If you've ever felt like you were starting over with nothing, with just the clothes on your back and a ghost in your heart, then stick around. This story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, because we're going to talk about what it really means to find a home. The bus groaned, a long, tired sigh of metal and air brakes that I felt deep in my bones. For 2 years, every sound in my life had been institutional. The buzz of fluorescent lights, the squeak of scuffed sneakers on polished linoleum, the distant, muffled shouting of a life I was never quite a part of. This sound, the rumble of an engine carrying me away, was supposed to be the sound of freedom. It just felt like falling. Beside me, Mia was a small, tight knot of a girl, her face turned to the window. She was 16, but sometimes in the right light, I could still see the 7-year-old who had first grabbed my hand in a sterile, beige-colored office and hadn't let go since. Her reflection stared back at us from the grimy glass, a pale ghost superimposed over the blur of strip malls and car dealerships that marked the edge of the city. We were leaving the only world we knew. Again, my hand tightened on the worn strap of the backpack at my feet. It contained everything we owned. 2 changes of clothes each, a dog-eared paperback Mia loved, my high school equivalency diploma, and a thick manila envelope with our names on it. The envelope felt heavier than everything else combined. Inside it was a deed, a death certificate, and a single tarnished key. "This is it, Leo," Miss Albright had said a week ago, her voice a careful, practiced calm that I'd learned to distrust. We were in her office, the same one where we'd been processed, evaluated, and reassigned for a decade. The air smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. "You're 18 now. The system has fulfilled its obligation to you." She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at a spot on the wall just over my shoulder. Her office was decorated with the crayon drawings of children who had long since passed through her doors, faded suns and lopsided houses taped to the filing cabinets. It was meant to be cheerful, I suppose. It just felt like a museum of forgotten kids. As for Mia, she continued, her gaze finally dropping to my sister, who was tracing the seams on the vinyl chair. "Her situation is more complicated. But given the circumstances and your legal emancipation, the state has agreed to grant you provisional guardianship, provided you have a stable residence." She slid the envelope across the desk. It stopped perfectly centered in front of me. She was good at things like that. Controlled. Precise. "This is your stable residence." I opened it. The legalese was a dense forest of words, but the gist was simple. Our uncle, Arthur Vance, was dead. He was our mother's brother, a man we'd never met, a name that was only ever spoken in whispers by caseworkers, usually followed by the words unreliable or troubled. And he had left us something, a piece of property, 20 acres of rural land, and a house in a town called Sparrow Creek, a place I'd had to look up on the library computer. It was a tiny dot in the middle of a vast green emptiness 3 hours north. "He was your only living relative," Ms. Albright explained, folding her hands on her blotter. "It seems he named your mother as his beneficiary, and with her passing, it defaults to you, to both of you." My mother, another ghost. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and strange. I couldn't remember her face without looking at the one faded photo I kept tucked in my wallet. "So we have a house?" Mia asked, her voice small. It was the first thing she'd said all meeting. Hope is a dangerous thing. I'd spent years trying to protect her from it. "Yes, you have a house," Ms. Albright confirmed. Then she delivered the blow. She was good at that too. "However, there are complications. Mr. Vance was not, diligent with his civic duties. There are significant back taxes owed on the property. Several years' worth." She slid another paper across the desk. It was a tax bill from the county, a number with a comma in it that made the breath catch in my chest. "Furthermore, a development corporation has placed a lien against the property. They've been trying to acquire the land for some time. They will likely foreclose if the taxes aren't paid. You'll have 90 days from the date of probate transfer, which is today. 90 days. 3 months to come up with a fortune we didn't have, or we'd be homeless. Truly homeless this time, without the thin, frayed safety net of the state. "What are we supposed to do?" I asked, my voice flat. I could feel the familiar cold dread creeping up my spine. The developers, Oak Ridge, have made an offer to buy the estate as is, which would settle the debts and leave you with a small amount of cash. Enough to get a deposit on an apartment, perhaps. She said it like it was a reasonable option, a kindness. But I saw it for what it was. The system, neat and tidy, washing its hands of the Vance children for good. Sell our only inheritance for a few months' rent. Then we'd be someone else's problem. Or, I said, my voice barely a whisper, we could go there. You could, she allowed, her expression unreadable. It's your property for now. But Leo, you need to be realistic. From the file, the house is in a state of disrepair. The town is economically depressed. There are no jobs. You have no money, no car. It's not a viable long-term solution. Neither was this, I wanted to scream. This life of being passed from one temporary home to another, of never having a key to a door that was truly your own. But I just nodded. I took the papers. I took the key. I took Mia's hand and led her out of that office for the last time. There were no goodbyes. We were just a file, now closed. The bus hit a pothole, jolting me back to the present. Mia flinched, pulling her knees up to her chest. The city was gone now, replaced by a rolling landscape of dormant fields, the color of wet cardboard under a sky the color of slate. Skeletons of trees clawed at the horizon. It was a bleak, empty beauty. It felt like it matched the landscape inside me. "You think it'll have a real porch?" Mia asked, her breath fogging the glass. "Like in the movies?" Her voice was quiet, tentative. She was testing the water, seeing if hope was allowed yet. "I bet it does," I said, forcing a confidence I didn't feel. "A big one, wrapping all the way around. We can put chairs out there in the summer." "And a swing?" "Definitely a swing." She smiled, a small, fragile thing, and leaned her head against my shoulder. The weight of it was both a comfort and a burden. I was her brother, her guardian, her only anchor in a world that had never given us one. I was 18 years old, and I was terrified I was about to fail her in the biggest way possible. The bus slowed, its turn signal clicking a steady rhythmic beat, like a clock counting down our final seconds of uncertainty. The driver's voice crackled over the intercom. "Sparrow Creek, next stop, Sparrow Creek." I looked out the window. There was nothing there, just a crossroads, a peeling sign, and a dirt road disappearing into the dense gray woods. This was it, the start of our new life, the place where we would either find a home or lose everything. The bus pulled away, leaving us in a cloud of diesel fumes and a profound silence. The air was different here, cleaner, with a sharp, cold scent of pine and damp earth. It was so quiet I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The town of Sparrow Creek, as it turned out, wasn't much of a town at all. A quarter-mile down the road was a cluster of buildings, a post office, a gas station with a small, attached grocery store, and a boarded-up diner with a faded sign that read, "The Hungry Robin." That was it. No people, no cars, just the whisper of the wind through the tall, skeletal trees that lined the road. According to the map Ms. Albright had printed for us, the property was another mile's walk. We started walking, our worn-out sneakers crunching on the gravel shoulder. Mia stayed close, her eyes wide, taking in the raw, desolate beauty of the place. I kept my hand near the pocket with the key in it, rubbing the cool metal with my thumb. It was the only thing that felt real. The address was marked by a rusted wrought iron gate hanging crooked on a single hinge. A stone wall, crumbling and overgrown with ivy, snaked off into the woods on either side. Beyond the gate, a long dirt driveway, more of a path really, was choked with weeds and fallen branches. And at the end of it, nestled in a clearing and shadowed by two enormous ancient oak trees, was the house. It was worse than I had imagined, and somehow more beautiful. It was a two-story farmhouse, once white, but now the paint was peeling in long, curling strips, revealing the weathered gray wood beneath. The roof sagged in the middle like a tired old man slumping his shoulders. Several windows were boarded up, and one on the second floor was shattered, a dark, gaping eye staring out at us. The porch Mia had dreamed of was there, but it was listing dangerously to one side, its railing rotted through in places. It looked haunted. It looked abandoned. It looked like us. "It's big," Mia breathed, her fear and awe mixed into a single quiet word. "Yeah," I said. "It's big." We pushed our way through the overgrown yard, the dead grass crackling under our feet. The front steps groaned in protest as I put my weight on them, but they held. The door was a heavy, solid oak, its blue paint faded to a chalky powder. The lock was old and stiff. I slid the key in. It felt like a momentous act, a ceremony. The key resisted, then turned with a loud, grating clunk that echoed in the silence. I pushed the door open. The air that rushed out was stale and cold, thick with the smell of dust, mildew, and forgotten time. It was the smell of a place that had been holding its breath for a very long time. We stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind us with a deep, definitive thud, sealing us in. The layout was simple. A long central hallway ran from front to back. To the left was a living room, dominated by a massive stone fireplace. A sofa and an armchair, draped in white dust cloths, looked like sleeping ghosts. To the right was a dining room with a heavy wooden table and chairs still in place, as if waiting for a family that had vanished mid-meal. Sunlight, thick with dancing dust motes, streamed through the grimy windows, painting stripes of pale light on the floorboards. Every surface was coated in a thick, gray blanket of dust. Cobwebs hung in the corners like macabre decorations. But underneath it all, I could see the bones of a good house. Solid wood floors, high ceilings, large windows. It was a place that had once been loved. We moved through the downstairs slowly, room by room. The kitchen was in the back, a relic from another era, with a huge cast-iron stove and a deep porcelain sink. There were still a few chipped plates in a cupboard. In a small pantry, we found jars of what might have once been preserves, now just dark, murky shapes in cloudy liquid. Everything was a reminder of a life that had stopped abruptly. "It's spooky," Mia whispered, her hand finding mine. I said, squeezing her fingers. "It just needs some work." I was trying to convince myself as much as her. We found the stairs at the end of the hall. They were steep and narrow, creaking with every step. The second floor had 3 bedrooms and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. The bedrooms were all empty except for the largest one, which held a simple iron bed frame, a rickety nightstand, and a wooden wardrobe. This must have been his room, our uncle's room. I felt like an intruder, a trespasser in his private space. There was nothing personal here, no clothes in the wardrobe, no books on the nightstand, just an empty room, as anonymous as he had been to us. And then I saw it. In the ceiling of the hallway, a square outline. A rope dangled from it, the attic. A sudden, inexplicable feeling came over me. A pull, a certainty that this was the most important place in the house. "Come on," I said to Mia. I pulled the rope. A set of rickety folding stairs descended with a groan of old springs and a shower of dust. The opening was a dark, forbidding square. I hesitated for a moment, then started to climb, my footsteps echoing in the cramped space. The air grew warmer, thicker, smelling of dry, ancient wood and something else, something papery and faint, like an old library. The attic was huge, stretching the entire length of the house. The roof sloped down sharply on both sides, and a single circular window at the far end let in a weak gray light. The space was filled with the detritus of a lifetime. Old furniture, stacks of newspapers, cardboard boxes collapsing under their own weight. It was a tomb of forgotten things. And there, in the center of the room, directly under the highest point of the roof, sat a large dark green footlocker. It was an old military-style trunk, bound with black metal straps and secured with a heavy padlock. Unlike everything else in the attic, it was relatively free of dust, as if it had been placed here more recently, or perhaps tended to. It didn't belong with the rest of the junk. It felt deliberate, important. This was it. I knew it in my gut. Whatever answers this house held were inside that trunk. But it was locked. We searched for a key, sifting through nearby boxes, running our hands along the dusty floorboards. Nothing. Discouraged, we stood there staring at it. this locked box holding the secrets of a man we never knew. I nudged a loose floorboard with the toe of my shoe, my frustration mounting. It shifted. I knelt down, my heart starting to beat a little faster. I pried at the edge with my fingers. The board came up easily, and there, nestled in the dark space between the joists, was a small brass key on a loop of twine. It was cool to the touch. It felt like it had been waiting for us. My hands were shaking as I fitted the key into the padlock. It turned smoothly, with a satisfying click. I lifted the heavy hasp and slowly, reverently, raised the lid of the trunk. The hinges creaked like a sigh of relief. The smell that rose from the interior was different from the rest of the attic. It was the clean, dry scent of old paper and ink. The trunk was packed with bundles of letters, neatly tied with faded twine. On top of the first bundle was a photograph, face down. I picked it up. It was a picture of a young woman with a bright, laughing smile, her hair blowing in the wind. She was standing next to a young man with a familiar jawline and sad, kind eyes. He had his arm around her. It was our mother, and beside her, looking uncomfortable but proud, was a man who could only be our uncle, Arthur. He looked so young, so different from the troubled ghost we'd been told about. Beneath the photo was a folded, yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local man hailed as hero in warehouse fire." The date was from 20 years ago. The article described how a young forklift operator named Arthur Vance had risked his own life to pull two of his co-workers from a burning building. It mentioned he suffered minor burns and smoke inhalation. This was our deadbeat uncle? A hero? It didn't make any sense. I picked up the first bundle of letters. They were thick, the envelopes soft and worn with time. The handwriting on the front was the same on all of them. For Sarah, our mother. My throat felt tight. I carefully untied the twine and pulled out the first letter. The paper was thin, almost translucent. The ink was slightly faded. I began to read aloud, my voice sounding strange and loud in the silent attic. Mia huddled close, her head on my shoulder, listening. "Dearest Sarah," it began, "I hope this letter finds you. I hope they let you have it. I'm sending it to the General Post Office box like you said. I hope you're okay. I hope the kids are okay." The date was from 11 years ago, shortly after we'd been taken into the system. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Things got bad for a while after the accident. The pills the doctor gave me for the pain, they got a hold of me. I messed up. I know I did. I lost my job, lost the apartment. By the time I got my head straight, you were already gone. They wouldn't tell me where you went. They said I wasn't family enough." I had to stop, my vision blurring. The official story we'd been given was that our uncle had abandoned us, that he'd shown no interest after our mother's death, that he was an addict who couldn't be trusted. But this letter, this was the voice of a man drowning in grief and regret. This wasn't abandonment. This was a man who had been shut out. I took a breath and continued reading. Letter after letter told the same heartbreaking story. He'd gotten clean. He'd found work, manual labor mostly, moving from town to town. He wrote to her every week, even though he knew she was gone, as if the act of writing could somehow keep her memory alive. He sent money. "I'm sending a little cash with this one letter read. "It's not much, but maybe you can buy the kids something nice. A toy for Leo, a new dress for Mia. Tell them their uncle loves them. Please, Sarah, tell them I didn't just disappear." We never got a dime. We never got a single toy or a new dress that didn't come from a charity bin. The money he sent, the love he tried to give us, had vanished into the same bureaucratic black hole that had swallowed our childhoods. Anger, hot and sharp, flared in my chest. Anger at the foster parents who must have pocketed the cash. Anger at the caseworkers who had painted him as a villain. Anger at a system that had so easily and carelessly erased this man's love for us. He wrote about buying this land. "I found a place, Sarah. It's quiet here. It's ugly and beautiful all at once. Just like us. 20 acres. A rundown house that needs more work than I've got years left in me. But it's ours. I'm saving it. For them. In case they ever need a place to land. A place that nobody can take away from them." The last letter was different. The handwriting was shaky, spider-like. It was dated just 3 months ago. Sarah, I don't think I have much time left. The doctor says the smoke did more damage back then than we knew. My lungs are giving out. It's funny, isn't it? The one good thing I ever did is the thing that's killing me. I'm scared, not of dying, but of leaving them with nothing but this mess. The taxes are piled up. I tried to keep up, but I got sick and couldn't work. There's a company sniffing around, trying to steal the land for cheap. Vultures. I need to tell you something. I need to tell the kids. All those years, I saved what I could. Every extra dollar. It's not a fortune, but it's something. It's a start. It's hidden safe. I put it where the world can't get it, where the foundation meets the field. It's for them, Sarah. It's all for them. Tell them I'm sorry I couldn't be the uncle they deserved. Tell them, tell them I tried. I finished reading, and the letter slipped from my fingers. The silence in the attic was heavier now, filled with the weight of a life we never knew, a love we'd never felt. I looked at Mia. Tears were streaming down her face, silent and steady. She wasn't crying for us. She was crying for him, for the uncle who had fought for us in secret, who had loved us from a distance, who had died alone trying to leave us a legacy of hope. I cried too. I cried for the boy who had believed he was abandoned. I cried for the man whose letters had finally found their way home. The dust motes danced in the pale light, like tiny, silent witnesses to it all. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows through the attic window. The world outside was turning a deep, bruised purple. We sat there for what felt like hours, surrounded by the paper ghosts of our uncle's life. The grief was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. But underneath it, something else was stirring, a fierce, protective anger. They had lied to us. The system, the foster parents, all of them. They had stolen our family, our history, and replaced it with a convenient narrative of abandonment. They had turned a hero into a villain to make their paperwork easier. And now they were trying to steal the last thing he had left us. This land, this broken, beautiful house. What do we do, Leo? Mia's voice was a choked whisper. She wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve, leaving a dusty streak across her cheek. The letters were spread around us like fallen leaves. She looked small and lost, but her eyes held a new kind of fire. The fragile hope from the bus was gone, replaced by a harder, more resilient resolve. She was seeing it now, too. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about justice. It was about honoring the memory of the man in these letters. I don't know, I admitted, my own voice hoarse. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The path of least resistance was still there, a siren song of simplicity. We could call the number Miss Albright gave us. We could talk to Oak Ridge Development. We could sell this place, take their blood money, and walk away. We could find a small apartment in some anonymous city, get jobs at a diner or a grocery store, and try to build a life from the ashes. It was the sensible thing to do, the practical thing. It was what Ms. Albright would call being realistic. We had no money. We had no skills. This house was a wreck, a money pit that would swallow us whole. The 90-day clock was ticking. Every day we stayed here, we were one day closer to foreclosure, one day closer to being thrown out with absolutely nothing. Mia must have been thinking the same thing. The money from the sale, she said softly. It would be enough. We could leave. Start somewhere new. Somewhere clean. I knew what she meant. Somewhere without ghosts. Somewhere without the crushing weight of the past. For a moment I let myself imagine it. A clean, empty apartment with white walls and a door that locked. A steady paycheck. The simple, uncomplicated peace of anonymity. It was tempting. It was so damn tempting. But then I looked at the letters in my lap. I saw my uncle's shaky handwriting. I put it where the foundation meets the field. It was a breadcrumb, a final desperate act of faith, left for us to find. He hadn't just left us a house. He left us a mission. He had trusted that we would be smart enough, strong enough to figure it out. Selling felt like a betrayal. It felt like letting the vultures win. It felt like agreeing with the lies they had told about him, admitting that he was just a troubled man whose legacy was worth nothing more than a buyout from a faceless corporation. He tried to provide for us, Mia, I said, my voice gaining strength. All those years, he was fighting for us. We're the only ones left to fight for him. But how? She cried, the frustration and fear bubbling over. We can't fix this house by ourselves. We can't pay those taxes. It's impossible, Leo. She was right. It was impossible. But since when had anything in our lives been possible? We were the impossible children, the ones who had survived, the ones who had stayed together when the whole world tried to pull us apart. Maybe we were built for this. I stood up and walked to the small circular window. I looked out over the land, our land. The overgrown fields sloped down to a line of dark trees. The sky was filled with a million stars, more than I had ever seen in the city, where the lights washed everything out. It was quiet, it was peaceful, it was ours. This was the home he had chosen for us. This was the sanctuary he had died trying to protect. My choice was made. It wasn't a logical choice. It was a choice of the heart, a choice born of loyalty and a sudden, fierce love for a man I'd never met. It was a promise to the ghost in the attic. We're not selling, I said, my voice ringing with a certainty that surprised even me. We're staying. We're going to find what he left for us, and we're going to save this place. Mia looked at me, her eyes searching my face. I saw the fear there, but I also saw a flicker of her own stubborn hope rekindling. She stood up and came to stand beside me, her shoulder pressing against mine. Together we looked out at the dark, silent land. It was no longer a burden. It was a battlefield, and we were finally ready to fight. The next morning we found the notice. It was tacked to the front door, a crisp white rectangle against the faded blue paint. It was an official-looking letter from Oak Ridge Development, a final offer of acquisition, before they initiated foreclosure proceedings with the county. The language was cold and corporate, full of terms like encumbrance and liquidation. At the bottom was a name, a Mr. Davies, and a phone number. It felt like an ultimatum, a shot across the bow. They thought we were just a couple of scared kids they could easily steamroll. Maybe they were right, but we had something they didn't know about. Our uncle's last words. I took the notice inside and laid it on the dusty dining room table. This is it, I said to Mia. This is the line in the sand. I picked up my phone. The signal was weak, just one bar, but it was enough. My hand trembled slightly as I dialed the number. A man answered on the second ring, his voice smooth and impatient, like he was doing me a favor just by listening. Davies. Hello, Mr. Davies, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My name is Leo Vance. I'm calling about the property at 142 Sparrow Creek Road. Ah, yes, the Vance estate, he said, a note of condescending pity in his voice. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Look, kid, I'll be blunt. The place is a teardown on a nice piece of land. It's got a tax burden that would choke a horse. My company is prepared to offer you $20,000. We take on the debt, you walk away with cash in your pocket. It's a generous offer, considering the circumstances. Frankly, it's more than you'll get when the bank auctions it off on the courthouse steps. $20,000. It sounded like all the money in the world, and nothing at all. It was the price of our history, the value they placed on our uncle's entire life struggle. It was an insult. I thought of Arthur Vance dying alone, his last thoughts of the children he was trying to save. I thought of his shaky handwriting, the love poured into those letters. No, I said. The word was quiet, but it felt solid, heavy. Excuse me? Davies sounded genuinely surprised. I said no, I repeated louder this time. We're not selling. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him recalibrating, shifting from feigned sympathy to annoyance. Son, don't be a fool. You don't know what you're sitting on. That land is worthless to you. You can't afford to keep it. This isn't a negotiation. This is your one and only chance to walk away with something. Take the deal, or you'll get nothing. The clock is ticking. The threat hung in the air, cold and sharp, but it didn't scare me. It energized me. It was the same tone every bureaucrat, every dismissive foster parent, every person in authority had ever used with us. The tone that said, "You are small and we are big. You have no power here." For the first time in my life, I felt like I did have power, the power to say no. "The property is not for sale," I said, my voice as cold as his. "Don't contact us again." I hung up before he could reply. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Mia. Her eyes were shining. She gave me a small, determined nod. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have any money. We had $67 between us and a cryptic clue from a dead man. But we had drawn our line. Now we had to find a way to defend it. Where the foundation meets the field. The words echoed in my head. We spent the rest of the day searching. We started with the house itself, examining the stone foundation where it rose from the dirt. We paced the entire perimeter, tapping on stones, looking for anything loose or out of place. We found nothing but solid, unyielding rock and crumbling mortar. The house stood on a small rise, and the field sloped away from it on all sides. The field could mean anything. We walked the edge of the property where the overgrown grass met the thick woods, tracing the line of the old collapsed stone wall that marked the boundary. It was slow, painstaking work. By late afternoon, we were tired, dirty, and discouraged. The phrase felt like a riddle with no answer. "Maybe we're thinking about it too literally," Mia said, slumping down to sit on a large flat rock. "Maybe it's not the foundation of the house." Her eyes drifted towards the far end of the property, where the skeletal frame of a large barn stood, its roof half collapsed, its walls leaning at a precarious angle. It looked even more derelict than the house. "What about the barn?" she asked. "It has a foundation, and it's right in the middle of the field." It was the only other structure on the property. It was worth a shot. We made our way towards it, our hopes low. The barn was a cavernous, gloomy space. The wind whistled through the gaps in the siding. Much of the roof was gone, and beams of pale afternoon light cut through the darkness, illuminating swirling dust. It was filled with junk, rusted farm implements, rotting bales of hay, stacks of old tires. It smelled of decay and animal droppings. The floor was packed earth, but like the house, the structure was built on a foundation of massive fieldstones. We started searching, moving slowly along the interior walls, our hands running over the cold, damp stones. Most of them were huge, immovable boulders set deep into the earth. It felt hopeless. We were about to give up when Mia called out, "Leo, look!" She was standing in the back corner, a part of the barn that was almost completely dark. She was pointing at the foundation wall. "This part looks different." I came over. She was right. In this small section, the stones were smaller, more like bricks, and the mortar between them was a lighter color, as if this part of the wall had been repaired or rebuilt. I ran my hand over it. One of the stones, about waist high, felt slightly loose. I pushed at it. It wiggled. My heart hammered against my ribs. I dug my fingers into the crumbling mortar around the edges and pulled. The stone scraped, then came free in my hands. Behind it was a dark, square cavity. And inside that cavity, wrapped in a thick, greasy piece of oilcloth, was a small metal box. We carried it out of the barn and into the fading light, setting it on the grass between us. It was an old cash box, rusted at the corners, but heavy and solid. There was no lock. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely work the simple latch. I lifted the lid. We both gasped. It was full of money, stacks of it, bundled with rubber bands that had grown brittle with age. It wasn't neat stacks of new bills from a bank. It was used currency. Fives, tens, 20s, a few 50s. The kind of money a man who worked for cash would save. It was wrinkled, soft, and smelled faintly of earth and oilcloth. My uncle's life savings. We sat there in stunned silence, just staring. Then slowly, methodically, I began to count. Mia watched, her hands clasped under her chin, her eyes wide. It took a long time. When I was done, I looked at her. "It's just over $12,000, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I looked at the tax bill we had brought with us from the house. The amount owed was $11,842. He had saved just enough. It was a miracle. A final, desperate gift from a man who had refused to give up on us. It wasn't a fortune. It wouldn't make us rich. It wouldn't fix the roof or buy us a car. But it would pay the debt. It would take the vulture's teeth out. It would give us a fighting chance. It would buy us time. And for the first time in a very long time, time felt like the most valuable currency in the world. The next day, we walked the 2 miles into town. The woman at the county clerk's office, a small annex attached to the post office, looked at us with open suspicion when we walked in. We probably looked like vagrants, our clothes dusty, our faces smudged with dirt from the barn. "We're here to pay the back taxes on the Vance property," I said, sliding the bill in the metal box onto the counter. Her eyes widened, first at the bill, then at the box full of cash. She spent the next hour counting it, her machine whirring and clicking in the quiet office. When she was done, she looked at me, a new grudging respect in her eyes. "It's all here," she said, as if she couldn't quite believe it. She stamped the bill paid in big red letters, the sound like a gunshot in the silence. She handed me a receipt. I folded the piece of paper and put it in my pocket. It felt like the most important document I had ever held. It was our Declaration of Independence. As we left, the woman called after me. "Your Uncle Arthur," she said, her voice softer now. "He was a quiet man, kept to himself, but he was good. He'd always help old Mr. Henderson next door with his firewood. I'm sorry for your loss." It was the first kind thing anyone had said about him. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We walked back to the house, the empty cash box feeling light in my hands. The land looked different now. The house didn't seem so menacing. The weight of the debt was gone, lifted. We weren't trespassers anymore. We weren't just squatting on borrowed time. We were home. The first winter was the hardest. The money was gone, spent on the taxes, and we had only a few $100s left for supplies. We learned to be resourceful. We found a stack of old storm windows in the barn and managed to repair and fit them over the broken panes, keeping the worst of the wind out. I found a rusty axe and learned to split wood from the fallen trees on the property, my hands blistering and then callousing over. We spent our days working, our nights huddled by the stone fireplace, the only source of heat in the drafty house. We ate a lot of canned soup and peanut butter sandwiches from the small grocery in town. The owner, a grizzled old man named Sal, started giving us a discount after the first few weeks, a silent acknowledgement of our struggle. We were a curiosity in Sparrow Creek, the orphans who had come back to reclaim the old Vance place. People watched us from a distance, but no one bothered us. We were left alone in our world of hard work and small victories. Every patched wall, every cleared path, every warm fire felt like a triumph. We were slowly, painfully, breathing life back into the house. And in return, it was giving us a sense of purpose we had never known. In the evenings, when the work was done, I would read more of my uncle's letters aloud to Mia. We pieced together his life, his lonely struggle. We learned about the jobs he'd worked, the towns he'd lived in, his quiet observations about the world. He wrote about his love for our mother, a fierce, protective bond that ached from the page. He was a thinker, a poet in his own way, a man who had made terrible mistakes but possessed a deep well of goodness. He wasn't the ghost we'd been given. He was family. One night, a blizzard swept in, burying us in 2 feet of snow. The power which we'd managed to get turned on went out. We were trapped, isolated, with only the fire for light and warmth. I thought we would be scared, but we weren't. We sat in the living room, wrapped in old blankets we'd found and washed, watching the flames dance. The house groaned and creaked around us, not in protest, but like it was settling in for the storm, protecting us. "He would have liked this," Mia said quietly, staring into the fire. "Knowing we're here, safe." I knew she was right. In that moment, surrounded by the howling wind and the deep silent snow, I didn't feel abandoned or alone. I felt found. I looked around the room at the bare walls and the mismatched furniture, at the dust that still clung to the corners no matter how much we swept. This place wasn't just a house, it was a legacy. The inheritance wasn't the land or the money, it was the story. It was the chance to rebuild, not just a physical structure, but our own sense of what family meant. It was the profound, unshakable knowledge that we were loved, that we had been fought for, and that we belonged somewhere. The wind howled outside, but inside by the fire, it was quiet. We were finally home. It's been a few years since that first winter. The house looks different now. The porch is level, with a swing that Mia sits on in the evenings. We have a real garden in the summer, and the roof doesn't leak anymore. It's still a work in progress. I suppose it always will be. I found a job working with a local carpenter, learning a trade, building things with my hands. Mia's finishing high school online and talks about going to a community college to study horticulture. We're making it. We're building a life our uncle would be proud of. Sometimes I stand on that porch and look out at the fields, and I think about the story we were told versus the story that was true. We were told we were alone. The truth was, a man was fighting for us every single day. We were told our inheritance was a burden. The truth was, it was a gift of immeasurable worth. It taught us that a home isn't something you're given. It's something you make. It's something you fight for. It's the story you choose to build on the foundation you've been left. And that's a lesson I wanted to share with you. So many of us are handed stories about ourselves, about our families, that aren't true. We're told we're not good enough, not worthy, not loved. We're defined by our worst moments or by the mistakes of others. But what if those stories are wrong? What if, hidden in the attic of your past, there's a different story waiting to be found? A story of resilience, of hidden love, of quiet strength. I'm sharing this because I want you to know that you have the power to find that story. You have the power to reject the narrative you've been handed and write your own, to find your own foundation and build something that lasts. It's the hardest work you'll ever do, but it's the only work that matters. So I want to ask you, what does home mean to you? Is it a place, a person, a feeling? Tell me in the comments below. Share a story about a second chance you were given or one you gave yourself. I read every single one because your stories matter. They are part of a larger story we are all building together. If this resonated with you, if you believe in second chances and the power of rewriting our own stories, then please subscribe and become a part of this community. We're a group of people who understand that the hardest paths often lead to the most beautiful views. Thank you for listening.